Welcome to This Week in Real Estate with Jonathan Harmon. Listen in as him and other members of the J Harmon Home Team speak about all things real estate with local experts here in the Middle Tennessee area. Be sure to check out jharmonhometeam.com for more information and how to get in touch with our amazing team. Welcome to the show.
All right. Good Monday morning. This is This Week in Real Estate. It is loud in here. It's like a rock show going on. There we go. Potting it down. Thank you, Trent. And we've got a new intro. I'm still working on figuring out my timing on that, but it's lovely. Trent, you have a great voice for
Thank
that.
you.
That's nice. What do you think, Chris?
I thought it was quite smooth.
Yeah.
I like rock intros too. So
Yeah, it was nice.
out.
Chris
Yeah.
is a rocker through.
He is, absolutely. So we're going to dive right in. We've got Mr. Chris Canary, commercial real estate broker with Keller Williams. And how many degrees worth of black belt? Like 17-degree black belt?
Yeah, totally related. 5. I'm a
5.
5th degree.
I knew it was like that.
Yeah.
Basically, so just to set the tone, you see this guy, he's a little unassuming, really nice guy, but all the while that you're talking to him, he's going through his head about 20 different ways that he can break your arms, break your legs, cut your kneecaps off with his pinky, like all these different things that
at least 20. Yeah, at least. Yeah.
And he just smiles all the way through it. So anyway, I've known Chris now for, I don't even know, a long time.
Yeah. I remember
Before
the day
I joined,
we met.
I know, I don't. So before I ever joined KW, I knew Chris Canary, and he just does a really awesome job at pretty much everything that he does. So I think you were with a different brokerage at that time, right?
I think I was at Red Realty when we met.
I believe that's correct. And so I've leaned on him pretty heavily when I've run into some commercial stuff. I try my best not to do a lot in that arena. I'm competent enough to do some, and other stuff I'm like, yeah, I think I'll get somebody else to help me with that. And we're gonna actually talk about that. We're gonna talk about what are the big differences in commercial and residential. Chris did confide in me. He did say that he has never been on a podcast before.
It's true.
Which all the things that he's done in his life, I found that very difficult to believe.
I know. I forgot about the video part too. I thought like a podcast with video would be called something different. Like
No,
I don't know.
Not here. Trent, should we call it something different?
I don't think so.
Podcast with pictures. I don't know.
It's a moving picture show.
Podcast with a twist.
But yeah. So, Chris, first of all, let's just start with you a little bit. You're a twin, which is
That's correct.
something that not everybody knows about you. That's pretty cool. Is your brother cool too?
Almost as cool.
Almost. Is he only like 4 degrees worth of black belts, or
He's no degrees. Yeah.
none?
No. We did taekwondo when we were like 7 or 8, and I think he was a blue belt in that. And
So is this something that you bring up at family dinners and stuff on a regular
I
basis?
try to keep it, on his mind. Yeah, yeah.
As you should.
When he gets out of line, yeah,
That's awesome. And which one of you is actually older?
that would be me.
Yeah,
By what they say, I don't.
You don't remember?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little blurry.
I was born at a very young age. Yeah. Okay. And how long have you been in real estate?
It seems odd to say, but I think it's like 20 years. Yeah. So,
Good gracious. You're old,
Yeah.
dude.
No, I started, in elementary school. Just wanted to get ahead of the curve.
Yeah. That's
But
a good
no, I'll
idea.
say I was licensed in, I think it was the end of 02. I'd have to look. Maybe it was 03.
Okay.
I didn't do a whole lot the first few years like a lot of people. And I worked in construction too the first, 5 or odd years. So
Were you a builder or you
I was.
supervisor? What did you
Yeah, I
build?
built did small commercial construction and then residential.
So let's go ahead and start with this. So small commercial building. Typically, are you talking about like build out stuff, like white box
yeah, like
build out?
office remodels and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're gonna spend a lot of time talking about differences in residential and commercial, and one huge difference is a lot of folks that do commercial building, their bread and butter, the stuff that actually puts food on their table, is building out empty spaces. Is that pretty accurate?
They do. Looks like they make a lot of money there. So
Yes.
correct. Yeah.
Having
yeah.
paid for that once or twice, they definitely make a lot of money there. But
well deserved, I'm sure. But yeah,
it is. But a lot of times when you go and you lease a commercial space, it's just a shell, or it's somebody else's stuff, and you got to rip out the middle of it and put your own stuff in it. Is that right?
Especially for retail, that's correct. Office, we usually have to reconfigure something like it just wasn't meant for that kind of use, or that, you know what I mean. But you turn 2,000 into 3,000 square feet,
Right.
all that fun stuff.
And what's interesting about that is knowing that that's kind of the nature of the business, so to speak. A lot of the commercial buildings are built such that it's literally a box, and you can kind of shuffle anything inside that box around.
It can be, yeah. Especially retail centers, industrial.
And then, of course, that drives leasing, right? So do you want
Correct,
one space, two spaces, three spaces? How are you going to join them? All that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
almost all leases will have some little paragraph that says we have the right to move you at our landlord's expense. And you always know that's one of the 10 things people are going to freak out on. But, if they've got 20,000 square feet and there's this one little tattoo shop in the corner that screws it all up, they want to be able to, move you. And it doesn't happen often at all, but, you want to have that ability.
Well, and so that brings me to probably at least, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, okay? So I'm gonna lead you into this. No. You don't even know yet. One of the biggest differences in residential and commercial, at least from my limited experience and my perspective, it all kind of stems from how the state views the purpose of the agent and then the, I guess, experience level perhaps of the client. So in a residential setting, the state basically assumes that let's make our laws, let's make our rules to where, as it involves agent-client relationship, let's assume that the agent is all-knowing and that the client doesn't know anything. Now, that not necessarily true, but the rules kind of go that way, right? A lot of protections for the consumer, very little assumptions, should we say, on the agent side of things. On the commercial side of things, it's a little bit different, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I think from having worked in residential, everything seems geared towards protecting the buyer. It's not so much in commercial. I think a good part of that is, like in residential, bottom line is like you're going to live in the house. The use is always the same. Even if you're selling it to investor, you're renting it to people that are going to live there.
Someone's going to live in the house.
They're going to eat, sleep, whatever. In commercial, it could be anything. Like it could be a restaurant or office space or industrial.
Storage barn or
yeah. So there's no way to, and everybody runs their business differently. So there's no way to protect a billion different ways. And nobody, at the end of the day, especially if you're like an owner user, knows their business better than them. Like I've worked with a whole lot of restaurants. I know like grease trap capacity and range hood size and parking requirements, and you get all those rough numbers in your head. But
and even like cooking this cuisine versus this cuisine, I'm going to need a higher powered range hood than this one.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's like I could research that to a degree, but I don't know what they're going to do. So I could steer them in the right direction. Sometimes I do know more than I want to say no more than them, but no more of their requirements. Even like coffee shops, I had to talk a guy and was like, "You're going to have a grease strap." He's like, "I'm not going to have to." It's like,
if you're going to have food,
yeah. If it's like milk waste, then and it depends on the municipality too.
Sure.
But I never want to speak for somebody. They still know their business better, but you just don't want to get them in a bad position.
But I think one thing that is universal is when we employ an agent, when we say, "Hey, we need you to help us with this transaction," the assumption is that you're going to bring something to the table that we don't already have,
Correct.
right? And so hopefully that's experience. Hopefully that is some kind of a knowledge base. It is a connection that we don't have. It's anything along those lines.
Correct. Yeah.
But the biggest thing, at least at this point in my career, probably the number one thing that any decent real estate agent, commercial or otherwise, does is to set the expectations, right?
Correct.
And even if you're wrong, here's some things that you might want to think about. Here's some things that you need to explore. Here's some things that's going to keep you up at night that might bite you in the butt a day before closing.
Yeah.
Have you checked all of these things? Grease traps, for example.
Yeah. No, that's what I mean. Especially in purchase deals, and you could have 90 days of due diligence, or you could have 270. And out the gate, I try to hit everything I can, so you're not at day 269 going, is this a problem? You know, and
right.
it's
Can we get this thing zoned?
Yeah,
You're 10 days out, dude.
Yeah. I know. I have. It's just how people are different. Some people are just nervous as cats about everything, and the others are like, it's okay.
It'll all work out.
Yeah, and sometimes I'd almost rather them be nervous as cats because they're with you trying to figure out their problems. But
so, do you keep ready-made checklists in your Dropbox that you can hand somebody and, hey, you're thinking about a restaurant, here's a list, or do you just kind of keep it up here and you sit down?
No, I mean I do have some different checklists I follow myself. I don't per se hand them over because I actually tried that. Nobody really paid any attention, so I was like, well, that didn't work.
Yeah. I gave you the list.
Please look at your binder.
Yeah, right.
But I try. It just depends on what it is. A lot, like say an industrial group I work for, they know what they're looking for. But I still want. I really like working for like repeats, like having the same client, getting to know how they think, and say if you're on the acquisition side or whatever, you know what to look for, what they'll like, and know what they don't care about, and then you can really. And
you have the wisdom of bumps that have already happened that you can hopefully smooth out before you get there.
Yeah. So I like that. And that's in any deal, just tenant, rep, whatever. So
we talked about kind of that philosophies at the state level, just the way that the government approaches those transactions and regulates them, and especially. I mean, you have the entire association, right? National Association of Realtors. Affects things, that code of ethics, all of those things. They still affect you, obviously, as a realtor, but the Tennessee Association of Realtors has for a very long time had kind of a canned residential contract that they have vetted out, and they modify every year because something else comes up. They've only very recently really pushed or used a commercial contract. And when I say very recently, let's say, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, if that. Historically, though, the contracts that you guys use we
don't use those much, no.
On the commercial side, that contract it's vastly different.
It is. Usually they're custom and attorney drafted. So after being in that world for so long, sometimes when I hear my residential friends say, like, I wrote up that offer in like 5 minutes, I'm like, that's so strange. Because, it's usually like, we go back and forth for a month, just on.
And that's just on one side of it. Yeah. And then you go over to the other side, right?
Yeah. And then it's all a bunch of red, and you're like, I think that's going to be a problem. But we write, like, as brokers, we'll often write, like, the LOI, letter of intent, and that just hammers out the basic points. And we'll negotiate that. And I try to get those pretty specific. So when we're doing the PSA, the contract, there's not, like, more heartburn there over items we should have already negotiated.
Right.
Sometimes they hit them like a really high level, and you're still like in the weeds going, well, I don't want to pay for that, but due diligence, purchase price, all that fun stuff, you just try to hit.
Yeah, you hit the things that you would typically negotiate in that letter of intent, and then that determines, do we even want to open up a full negotiation at this point, right?
Yeah. And those can go, sometimes they go quickly, sometimes it's a long time. You're like 3 weeks later, we sent you that LOI.
Yep, you sure did.
Yeah. We'll get back to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the hard thing. Like, I know if there's a residential agent on the other side, they're going to hand me a TAR contract. And I think they're good for some markets and some things, but by and large, you hand that to like a legitimate commercial broker, and they look like you just handed them cancer. It's like, what is that? So.
And I would say there's probably a difference in using that on leasing versus purchase as well, right?
Probably, yeah. I've never used one on leasing that I can recall. But
I mean, it's got provisions in there, but the problem is that, kind of to your point, that contract tries to address all possible scenarios, and it's just...
Yeah, it has all those addendums, and people will just click all of them. So then if you receive that, you're like, this is 1 billion things, you know.
Right. It's going to take us 5 years to close.
Yeah. But I mean, I think they have their purpose sometimes. Most of the people I work for don't want to use them, and I prefer not to try. If you put in too much custom language, then it's like residential. You don't want to be a real estate attorney. Yeah, and I'm not an attorney.
That's right. You are a black belt, but not an attorney.
Right. Yeah.
What as far as the business, you know, for 20 plus years that you've been doing this, are you on the commercial side? Would you say you've done probably more leases than purchases and sales?
Yeah, probably.
It seems like there's probably more leasing.
There's a lot of commercial leasing. Yeah, I don't do residential leasing. I'll have people ask me about that, and I couldn't know less of it. That's a whole nother thing. But probably, I don't know. I say 20 years, like it's probably been 12 for commercial.
Okay, gotcha.
So, which is still, you know.
Again, this is coming from a residential guy, right? The appearance is that you can get lost in the weeds in a lease contract significantly easier than you can in a purchase. To me, the purchase is, hey, here's the chunk of land. Does the use fit? That's one of my due diligences. You know, can we actually build what we want to build? That's a due diligence. Does it accommodate and does it inspect well, right? Is it in good shape? All of that to me fits very much like either a land deal or a, similar to a residential. But you get into the leasing, and holy cow, it can get way convoluted.
It can. It's a lot of legalese. A lot of times, I remember one landlord in Nashville used to have some line he would stick in just to see if people read them, and most of the time they didn't catch it, and it would just say, "You acknowledge that I am the supreme being," and something else like that. And I was like, "That's awesome." Some people would sign off, "Yes, you're the supreme being," and
really,
yeah, and so. And it is strange, like you'll work them to death, like back and forth, and then still like two sides of attorneys and two brokers, you'll be like the day before signing, you're like, that line's goofy. Like, how did we all miss that?
Yeah.
But it can vary. Like,
I'm going to add that to my residential lease.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely going to do that.
It was something else, and you acknowledge of the supreme being. Maybe it, like, I don't know, you had to buy him a horse or something, but
that's hilarious. That's awesome.
But yeah, even like little retail spaces like in a Kroger Center, those typically are long leases. So it's like 60 pages for 1,200 square feet or whatever, and that can be intimidating.
It can. Well, because it gets into basically everything. Who's going to build it out? Who's going to pay utilities? Who's going to pay to sweep the front sidewalk? Who's going to, everything. If the roof leaks, is there a cap on that?
Yeah. I know I have a Hispanic tenant that I like working with, and we've done multiple deals, and it's funny, I'll had to have the lease, and I always like go through it too, but he'll always I'll say, "Did you read it?" He'll just say, "It just says if I don't pay, I don't stay." And I'm like, kind of.
Yeah. There's a lot more to it than that, but we can start with that.
Yeah. That's in there too.
Yes. What about time frame? So, typically on a residential situation, we're 30 to 45 days. We identify the property, we make an offer, we negotiate it out. That happens in 3 days is a long time, worth of negotiation. And we're 30 to 45 days to get to close. We close, people move in. Hopefully we follow up with them throughout their lives, and that's pretty much it. Talk to me about time frames on a residential or on a commercial. So I want to open up a new store. I need some retail type space. I approach Chris Canary. How long is it going to take for me to be able to start working on the space that we identify? And
like you're saying, we just find it. Like I represent the tenant, and
you represent. Yeah, I'm the new tenant. You represent me. I want that space right there. Yeah. How long till I can open my store?
Yeah, it depends on what it is, but and what it was previously used as. If sometimes you can plug and play. If you're a retail use.
Let's pretend that I don't have to do much modification. We've identified it, and now we're going to write that LOI. What are we looking at time frame?
It still depends on the landlord. Say you're like one of the buildings I lease for on the square. If you're like, I need to get in March 1st, and you like it as is, that's going to be a struggle, but it's probably possible. You know?
Oh wow, so it can go pretty fast.
Well, like them, like I was thinking of like that Truist building, like they have all their ducks in a row. So I write up the LOI. We have the same format. I send it to the attorney. Of course, I have to kind of like stay on everybody.
Yeah, come on, let's go.
Not that they listen a lot, but you know, they know what they're doing. They draft it up. It depends on too, like a lot on the tenant. Like a buyer, like are they going to read it for like 3 weeks, or are they going to just do it? You know, and there's no wrong answer. you know, whatever they need to do, but it can go that quickly. But often you're a few months, you know, 2 or 3 months out. It just depends on the attorneys a lot of the times. And
well, let's pretend I don't know anything. What expectation are you going to set with me? I mean, are you going to say, you know, budget 3 months to get your space negotiated, and then construction? Obviously, that could be. I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, what would you tell me as a new guy? I'm looking for a retail space. I haven't identified it, you know, but I'm not super picky. Whatever that means anymore, you know.
Yeah, if it's something that's not too hard to find, I mean, 3 months out's not unreasonable.
Okay.
With the little guys, like I say, little guys, like, you know, say you own $10 million worth of retail centers, you'd still be a little guy compared to some REIT or whatever. Those you can generally move quicker on. If it's
less layers for the decision to go through.
Yeah, if it's like, you know, a big corporate owner, sometimes they go quickly, but usually, you know, somebody's checking in with you, and or you're checking in with them, and it takes forever.
Sure.
It's hard to say, but I get beat up a lot on like your grocery store deals because the real estate business isn't their main business; it's selling groceries. So it's understandable that's low on their list, but it does seem kind of crazy when you're like, I turned this in May and it's October. You know,
that's a long time.
Yeah. I get a lot of like, like I call it like amateur negotiation. Like, well, it's vacant, shouldn't they be? And like, they have so much money, they just don't really care. You know, they're happy to have you, but they're not in a hurry. You know,
either. It doesn't hurt them for it to be vacant for a couple more months.
Yeah, when people ask me about commercial real estate, what that's like, I always think it's like just have, and I don't mean to sound negative, but like you just have somebody follow you around all day long and say, "Have you heard anything?" Because that's pretty much, you know, you're always like, "I'll tell you if I hear something." But
I think that's so. Again, that experience that I've had, it's just been. You're right. It's a longer lead time period. The pace that people work, it's just different, and probably a lot of that has to do with, like you said, the usage, right? So you own, you know, a couple $100 million worth of commercial real estate. You're just not going to be in a huge hurry to rent this little 1,500 square foot parcel.
Yeah. I think that a lot of times
you don't have to be.
Yeah, a lot of times they're just, especially now, they're just a lot of companies are just understaffed, and it just takes a long time to process. And I think that's where if a residential agent tries to do commercial, they get frustrated. But I know you always hear that commercial agent didn't call me back, but I'll be in a meeting and a residential agent will call, text, and email me in like 30 minutes. So like I just can't talk to you right now.
I think that comment was directed at me. I'm feeling a little guilty right there. I'm pretty sure I've actually done that.
Yeah, but it'll be okay. But
don't you want to sell this place?
Yeah.
Right.
But I know they're like, especially the last year, if you had buyers, y'all had to move quick or you missed out. So it's not necessarily the case. Commercial still move quickly. Like you'll see that, you know, unicorn deal, and you're like, we got to move. You know.
I think that's the difference that I see. I agree with that. Is it moves slowly right up until it doesn't, and then all of a sudden it's just done.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's kind of like a lot of hurry up and wait, but I don't know. You just get used to it. So, but if you don't, I think not to generalize commercial, it's you work for people that want things to move quickly in a business that moves slowly. So it's always that kind of fight. But
well, and I think again, if we kind of go back to a basic difference, I think that is, to me, that spells out the difference is that with residential it's very predictable. It is even in a volatile market, the steps, the process, the way we go about things, time frames, it's pretty doggone predictable. And commercial just isn't.
No, I like to say differently, but yeah, and it really does depend. Like each leasing something in one building and purchase and an owner, user, investor. That's all works at different speeds, and you get there eventually.
Well, and sometimes even with the same person, this space is different than that space, so therefore it's different, or this building is different than that building, or this month is different than last month, or whatever.
Yeah. No, it can change for sure.
What about due diligences and things like that? So what are some of the things? I mean, obviously you've got some zoning and things like that people have to worry about. Can I even put my business, whatever it is that I choose to do, in this particular space, right? The government has some things to say about that. And that's one that probably gets overlooked occasionally. Somebody just assumes, hey, there's a whatever next door. Obviously, I should be able to.
There's an expression for that, but yeah.
Yeah, that out of you and me.
Yeah. I mean, I think in commercial people get zoning, like planning and zoning, and building and codes, like think of them as the same thing, and they're not. Like for zoning, you can usually just get a zoning letter saying this is what we're going to do, and and they'll sign off on it.
Yes, you can do that.
Yeah.
Not how, but yes, you can.
Yeah, exactly. And the how would be go to building codes. I remember doing some, like most of the time I think I pitched pretty well, but I'd never been to an escape room, and the Murfreesboro escape room guys, I'm sure they've called like we would do a space here, and there wasn't one here, and I had no idea like what they were, so I called now I forget if it was zoning or codes. It was like, what do they do? It's like they lock people up and then see if they can get out. And it's like that. It's like after I said it, was like I should have thought that through.
Yeah, that's not exactly what I mean.
I mean they can get out,
right?
It's just a game.
Yeah, that's funny. So, what are some other things though in that due diligence realm that people tend to kind of forget about when they're mapping out their time frames, when they're mapping out their flow chart or whatever? What are some other things besides zoning? I mean, that's where we start probably, and obviously, the size. Will my business fit in this space?
Yeah.
But what are some other due diligences that people sometimes forget about?
It depends on the use. And I probably keep saying that, but say like retail, and then like a lease, people forget about. It seems like an obvious thing, but people forget about signage. It looks like there's 3 spaces and you assume it's fine, but you need to make sure you have signage. Parking's pretty much always an issue, and you need to make sure there wasn't some weird allotment of parking to one tenant for some reason, and that you really only have so many, Right. And industrial, I've noticed people assume if it's industrial that you can just do whatever all the time, and there's different levels, different municipalities obviously have different designations, but like some you can have distribution or warehousing, but you can't actually manufacture anything. And then as minor
the definition of manufacturing is different as well, right? Are we assembling something, or are we actually stamping something out?
Yeah. I mean, even like, and I apologize, I'm not well versed the second in it, but like breweries, you had to go in industrial, I assume.
That's right. Not anymore. That all changed in the last year.
Yeah, because I remember working on some in Nashville, and they actually there were all kinds of different designations, micro, macro brewery.
How much you make, and I mean, do you serve food? I mean, there's all kinds of things that you look at. One of the things that we ran into, bathrooms. Right?
Yeah.
Do you have them? Are they accessible? Right?
Yeah.
Accessibility.
Yeah, I got to use them. Be able to get to them. Yeah. No, I mean, I think in commercial, especially for land deals, the number one things is to have sewer, and that kills more deals than you can imagine. Because septic, you'll have them on something in the county. It's just not, it's not super common. But usually it's a relatively low requirement, because you're not. If it's a shop space, they're not taking showers there, right? But you still got to use the bathroom at some point.
That's right.
So,
Somebody will.
yeah. So that's another DD item.
Well, and then the city gets into, so yes, it's zoned. You're allowed to do this, right? But then the house starts coming in. And so, like with our space, there's multiple little offices and things like that. So we had to negotiate with the city a little bit on the number of tap fees. So the building's super old, and nobody ever paid a tap fee.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Well, when we changed the use, they start looking at it almost like it's a new building. Because from their perspective, it's a new opportunity, for them to assess some fees.
Yeah, yeah. No, all that comes into play for sure. And that's what you run into a lot, like an existing building. Like I worked on one the other day that had, a warehouse that has an apartment in it. And the buyers are like, can they have an apartment there? And I'm like, by zoning, it looks like technically you can. But, I'll check. And, of course, the city had no idea there was an apartment in there, and you're like, how do you play that? Most situations it's okay. You just need to go back and get everything official. But
if it's an old building and it was this and now it's going to be this,
it's a whole nother, yeah, and that can be a struggle.
It can.
That's why I like working, say, in Murfreesboro, where you know who to get, and like in Metro, you'll often never talk to the same person twice.
Yeah.
Which the engineers that work there, and then you go through your council people have designated areas where not here. Anyway, I know that's a whole nother road, but
right.
But that's why I say in different municipalities, to make sure due diligence would. And Nashville's more going through the council person than necessarily here because they're not over a
specific area. Yeah, we're all at large here.
Yeah.
Our experience with the brewery and getting that space going, people talk a lot about, the city's a pain and the city and a lot of negativity. And there's probably been instances where that was rightly earned. That was just plain not my experience.
Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of stuff, like, they've been pretty easy to communicate with. So, I would much rather work with Murfreesboro than.
Well, I think the key is that you go to them and you say, all right, this is what I'd like to accomplish. Yeah. How can I do this?
Yeah.
Right? And kind of go into it with a little bit of humility and say, I know we can. I'm just curious how.
What's the best way? Yeah. I mean, I've worked on a lot of stuff around the square, and it's, in general, I think for the betterment of the square, and it seems like they've been good to work with there because we all want the square to be nicer.
We do, and they just did. I guess it was last year. They did an inventory of the upstairs spaces around the square, looking at possibility for residential to be around. And I love that idea, and just the possibility that you can live above. Pick your favorite place. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've seen a few apartments on top of some spaces I've worked on. I don't know if they were official or not, but they're there.
Right.
They're nice.
Yeah. All right. So let me ask you this, and we'll go down this road. And being a residential guy that has done this much commercial, and some commercial is significantly more straightforward than others, right? And that's the stuff that I tend to say, I can manage that, right? Some of it gets very quickly, it gets over my head, and I'm like, okay, we need to hand this to someone that's experienced. So from your perspective, there is a big difference in residential and commercial. What are some specific things when you're looking at a deal, or maybe you're looking at a deal that I'm looking at, and you go, you should probably hand that off to someone? Like, what are some telltale signs? Maybe you're talking to a potential buyer or whatever. What are some things where you say, you definitely want an experienced commercial agent, not just kind of a general practitioner?
I don't know. I mean, I would think most. But
That's fair.
You're
not going to hurt my feelings, so go for it.
I don't. It's a hard thing to if you just do. I look at it like I know like a lot of full-time residential real estate people don't really love part-time agents that work a full-time job or whatever.
Sure.
And of course we all got to kind of start there, but if somebody that sells one house a year, are they as competent as you that sells, however, I'm sure it's a high number, and so the confidence level and experience is just incomparable. So I'd say the same if you did one commercial deal a year, whatever that might be. You're not really building on much experience. So it's just hard to say as far as like a sign. I know what you're asking. I would say probably most of the time you probably shouldn't do it, but there's plenty. I think residential agents think that it's a sign of like commercial guys looking at them as being stupid, and it's not that at all. If there's plenty of sharp residential agents, plenty of commercial agents probably not that sharp.
Right.
It's what they work in every day.
Well, do you think it goes both directions? I mean, in other words, if a buddy came to you and said, "Hey, man, help me buy a house," do you think it goes both directions? Would you say, I'm going to refer you to somebody that sells 60, 70, 80 houses a year? Do you think it goes both directions? Like, is it?
Yeah, I think almost all commercial brokers that have never done a house deal wouldn't do it and wouldn't be proficient at it. I don't pursue it, and I haven't sold a house in a couple of years. I may help a relative just because I think I've helped a lot before. But get one house this year, but that may not. And that would be my dad.
Right.
But other than that, and even that makes me kind of nervous because of I haven't seen these contracts in a while. But
well, and it's not just the contracts, and I think this is what you were also driving at, is what is the normal process right now, and what is the climate of where we're operating? And, my biggest concern is, and this is when I was looking at doing it for myself on the brewery space, and I decided ultimately not to, is am I leaving something out? Like, what am I forgetting just because I'm ignorant about the process? Could I have gotten more here? Could I have pushed a little harder here?
Yeah. No, that's what, just having a general feel of what the market is huge, I would think. So as far as like a commercial doing a residential and then vice versa. But that's what, there's so many different sectors in commercial. Like in Murfreesboro, I have to kind of be a generalist. If I'm based out of here. I mean, I work in Nashville or Franklin or Gallatin or wherever, but and that just means I work in retail, office, industrial, flex spaces, whatever. A lot of my friends and other brokerages say in downtown they just work in office.
Just office.
Yeah. And a lot of the big brokerage houses don't allow you to do anything else. So not only, I guess my point is, not only are they not allowed to say sell a house, but they wouldn't. Like office broker won't do a retail deal.
Yeah, won't do a warehouse or won't do a yeah.
So like I don't work much in say multifamily, and I'll get 2 or 3 calls this week of somebody wanting to buy apartments, but it just didn't interest me as much, and it's a very crowded field,
Well, and that is, there is some overlap there with a lot of your residential folks. Should be or not, irrelevant, but. That would be the one area that a lot of residential.
No, I think so. I always think it's weird if I look at one of those to evaluate, because I get used to evaluating a strip center, and it's like Smoothie King and Marco's or something. You look at the tenant roster for an apartment, it's like Jimmy and Sandra.
Yeah.
It looks weird, but yeah. But those are obviously, that's the hot thing right now. The 2 hottest, I would assume, sectors would be multifamily and industrial.
Industrial. Why is that?
That's been huge the last couple of years, mainly because, especially in our area, we're a great distribution hub for the rest of the Southeast.
Sure.
Even
3 interstates converge.
Yeah. But manufacturing, especially during the pandemic and everything just went huge. But here, the big thing, like to that point of distribution, is like outdoor storage, like truck parking and trailer parking and that kind of
Boats
thing. And those are very hard to get at the moment. I work for a couple different out-of-state companies that do that, just acquire asset. That's just where they have, I don't know, that's $1 billion fund, but probably $500 million, and that's just where they place their money, industrial, because it's going to be safe. If you look in cities, they're not rezoning a lot of stuff to industrial, so what's here is what's here.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, our market, we talk on this all the time about the residential market right now and the volatility that's going on with interest rates and all of that kind of stuff. Obviously, it's not exactly the same world that you operate in, but I'd say there's probably some correlation there. What is the commercial market like right now in Murfreesboro, Tennessee?
It's still
Compared to last year. Let's do it that way.
Yeah, I think it's still very good. The only thing I've noticed, like people pulling back on, is like just the big ground up speculative projects.
What does that mean? Decipher that for me.
Yeah, say you want to build a big mixed use something off the square.
So I buy a chunk of land or an existing building and bulldoze it, and I'm going to.
Yeah. Now those will still happen. I think to prove it to whoever you're financing it with, you've got to at least say, "Oh, I've got these three key tenants." Kind of lined up.
This much is already spoken for.
Yeah, it's harder just to. This time last year, people were still swinging a little blindly. We think it'll do well, so we'll just buy it. And that's
if you build it, they will come.
Pretty much, yeah. And I think that's a lot of that's on the lending perspective, just convincing their banker. There's a lot of you'll hear that in commercial the term family offices, which sounds kind of mafia, but there's a lot of those for family money, and then other people they know will invest in areas like here, know, and they know what they're doing, but it is this kind of crazy money sometimes. I have one.
So it's not with a commercial bank, is what you're saying?
Correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I had one lately, and I've kept pitching them a couple deals, and Chris, it's too small. And well, what is I thought that was your range, and they're 15 million is the smallest, but ideally closer to 100. I'm oh, it's a little different than I thought you were going for. But,
yeah. So what does $100 million in commercial get you in Murfreesboro these days?
Yeah, it would still get a lot.
I mean, is that a multi-story? What? I mean, seriously, what is that?
Yeah,
I have no concept of that.
Yeah,
$100 million house doesn't exist that I'm aware of in Tennessee. You know what I mean?
No, most of the time those are going to be bit large industrial, 300,000 square feet or something like that. Mm-hmm. Mixed in with something else. It'll be package deals, I guess. So it'll be multiple properties, not necessarily one property.
I see.
And that's what you see a lot. You'll see. They'll call them portfolio sales, but it'll be 6 different deals in one.
So one of the things, compensation is a little bit different. Obviously, if you sell something, that's one thing, but if you lease it, that's a whole other thing. There's a valuation. If I built commercial and I wanted to hire you to lease it out, I'd have to have some upfront operating cash as well, and then I'd collect residuals on the back end of it. How nervous would that make you if you have a $50 million warehouse, 300,000 square feet, and one tenant occupies that space?
Yeah, that's why you want that tenant to be Meta, right. Or some Google or whatever. But it's weird. That's weird how different people look at things. Some investors are only single tenant. I don't have to worry about it. Less management
until you do.
Yeah.
Right.
Until they're gone.
Right.
But then some love multi-tenant stuff, and so it all depends on the investor.
What about you? Are you more of a multi-tenant or are you more of a single tenant? What is Chris Canary's philosophy on that?
I mean, I would like the single tenant deals if I was developing one, because usually 1031 people are going for whatever's simpler. So if you want to exit out of it, those deals go much higher per square foot. Even oil change places on a 10-year lease or 15-year lease, if you look at what they actually go per square foot, you're like, good grief, that's a lot. But it's a guaranteed income stream.
Until it's not.
Until it's not, yeah. But that's the idea, is to go for the big boys.
Mm-hmm.
But I look more on area than for say multi-tenant or single tenant. I just say that a lot of single tenants could be a corner lot in a prime space. So if they do go out, you're going to have a line of people. You're not
going to even though you might have a month or two without, you're still going to be able to, or 3 or 5 or whatever.
Yeah, it could be a while. Yeah. But that's why I'd say that. I mean, think of Walgreens and gas stations and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. They're all, you can convert it to a multi-tenant if you want to.
That's true. So you say it's still going pretty well. The money's getting a little bit more difficult right now. You're going to have to prove it a little bit more before you do the ground up stuff. What about, I would think that you, just based on the pace that you're getting things and the number of inquiries and things like that, you kind of have a leading indicator into the overall economy of at least our area, right? So is, from a business standpoint, stuff opening, people inquiring, people coming here, people wanting to be entrepreneurs, that kind of thing. You get a little preview of what that looks like. Is Murfreesboro, Rutherford County, Middle Tennessee still strong?
I believe so. Yeah. I think a lot of the stuff I work on too is like, I'll do like your 1,500 square foot lease or 2,000. And a lot of guys don't want to do that.
Lifeblood of the community, though.
Yeah,
I mean, that's important stuff.
Yeah, so I work with a lot of small business owners, and they're still seem strong. So I know I get that like 2 or 3 times a week. I'll have somebody say, "Chris, since that pandemic, stay with me. People are gonna lease less office space." And like, I kind of thought about that before.
Yeah, maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
And is that true? I mean, are offices harder to lease now than they were pre-pandemic?
It like that 6 months, like after it shut down, and I got like a couple big large office projects like the week before that. It was like, that's great. I got a building I'm not allowed to go into.
Yeah, right.
Lease that, Chris.
Yeah.
But no, a lot of the smaller, tenants are still going strong. I mean, I work some in downtown Nashville, but not often, or at least not lately. And I mean, some of those guys that are like, literally 50,000 square feet of office, those guys are pivoting, and getting more of a mix, and probably downsizing or, renegotiating their leases. But I haven't seen that as much.
Which honestly, that probably opens up opportunities for upstarts to be able to come into a chopped up 50,000 square foot space, and get 2,000 in a prime location.
Yeah, a lot of offices is reconfiguring spaces all the time, rather than retail. There's not as much flexibility usually, but
sure.
But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of those big leases probably pulled back, or I know they did, but I haven't seen. I really couldn't name one in Murfreesboro that was like a big one, and they were just like, never mind. I'm sure there are some people looking that, put on the brakes a little bit, but
sure. But we also don't really have skyscraper office buildings.
I know. I've had people call and be like, like Cool Springs, I want that here, and like, well, a little limited, but I think we're gonna get some. It's we're getting there, but it's a little bit of a slow process.
All right, here we go. We're gonna start wrapping up. Top 3 business opportunities from Chris Canary's perspective. What the business climate here? What are we missing? Yeah, I'm asking for free advice. Top 3 things that somebody that's watching should open in Murfreesboro that there's opportunity. Not that you want, but
not that I want,
but that there's opportunity.
Opportunity for like a real estate investor, or like any
for an entrepreneur.
Huh. That's interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna have to think on that. No,
no. You got to go.
No, I mean, I think of it from like a real estate development. I'm still pretty pro industrial. It seems like we've got I know that's it's like a bit controversial, but I don't know that we have much infrastructure on like EV stuff. So whoever wants to get ahead on that, even charging stations, whatever. I'll see the leases on some, like I saw one for Rivian the other day and stuff like that. And you're like, well, that's cool. I'll probably stay ahead of that.
So some industrial space, EV.
Yeah. I know everybody wants me to get a Whole Foods here, and I'm working on that. No, I'm not working on it. I don't think I have much pull with Whole Foods.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to happen for a while. But
yeah, I know I've worked on some deals that appear in our old Dear Murfreesboro. Like, I'm glad I didn't get my picture on that. But I would say, yeah, industrial EV. I mean, still food choices. In different parts of the city are pretty limited.
Gotcha.
So I think we can still build out some restaurant space.
Which is amazing, because Murfreesboro has a reputation of having like every restaurant known to
It
man.
does, yeah. And I guess I say that, or I have people, and I remember saying this years ago, and then the D&J like had a quote that said, Chris Canary thinks there should be more restaurants in South Murfreesboro, and then like the first comments like, that's the last thing we need, and it's
Sure.
just, you would think alleviate traffic, people don't have to drive across town to go whatever.
Well, and I think that's smart. I think that the idea here, and we talk about this, I say it jokingly all the time, but it's actually probably true, is that Murfreesboro is 45 minutes from Murfreesboro.
It is, yeah.
And so if you want to go to a restaurant, if you live in the Siegel area and you want to go to a restaurant that's over on Medical Center, as mileage-wise, that's not very far.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a 20 to 25-minute drive.
It is.
I mean, it just is.
Yeah. I still in my head forget sometimes, even though I go over it like every day, it's the bridge over Broad. Like, that's so much better than it used to be.
Oh, yes.
And I'll think, it's going to be 30 minutes, and it's not. It's 15 minutes or whatever. Obviously,
if you hit it at the right time.
Yeah, I was going to say if you hit it at the right time.
But if you live in the Blackman area, you're not coming over to the Siegel area.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. No, a lot of these, especially like retail restaurant guys, if I'm talking to their rep that's in New York or wherever, it's always, everybody always looks at the interstate and they're like, we want to be there, by the interstate. But I try to explain to them, like, people that live over here don't go over here, so you need to pull your demos, from here.
You almost have to look at Murfreesboro as 2, maybe 3, maybe even 4 cities, the way it's divided up.
Yeah, because, I mean, somebody in Las Casas isn't going, to our office area.
That's
what
right.
I mean?
Christiana's not heading up to the soccer park. I mean, it's too far.
Yeah. So
okay.
Good times.
Good opportunities. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate our friendship and the things that you do for our community. There's all kinds of stuff that we could keep going on, but I think we're out of time. So, how was your first podcast?
I liked it. I know it looks like you give massages in here. It's a nice little relaxing room.
I do not. Trent might. I'm not sure.
Pretty sure.
Yeah, Jonathan does. You don't want that to happen. I promise. Yeah.
But no, it was nice. It feels weird, but yeah, it's a nice room. You were gentle.
I told you I was going to be.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, if you need help with commercial stuff, call my friend Chris Canary. If you just want to bounce some ideas and get a pulse for, you've got this idea, you want to figure out where it goes, you want to figure out if it's even feasible, he's a good place to start and can give you some things to start researching before you spend a whole lot of time and a whole lot of money.
It's true. It goes quick. Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. So start with an expert, and he's a pretty darn good one to tap for that. If you have residential needs, I feel like I'm probably a pretty
Excellent
decent choice for that as well. So you can reach out to me. And then, of course, Trent, you let me forget our friend Bryan Nale over at Primis Mortgage. Bryan does an awesome job on that residential lending side of things. I've actually talked to him, 4 or 5 times in the last couple days about some different scenarios, and their move to Primis allowed a lot of cool things to happen that he couldn't do before. So if you've got some unique circumstances on the home buying side of things, give me a shout or give Bryan a shout, and we'll get you guys together on that. So thank you, Bryan, for always supporting Spread the Positive and the mission in our community.
Yeah, thanks, Bryan.
Trent,
He
got
just left
anything?
a really awesome comment. He said, I heard a few years ago that west of 24 in Murfreesboro would be like the 5th biggest city in the state.
Really?
That sounds pretty accurate.
Maybe. I would like to verify that, but I bet that's not
Pretty close.
I bet that's not wrong.
Yep.
Yeah.
So pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Bryan. Thanks, Chris. You nailed it, bro.
It's always a pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good, man.
All right. Well, I guess that's it. Trent, you got anything else to add?
No, just thank you. Thank you to everybody involved. And that
Thanks
was
for
great.
having me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Were y'all all happy with the Super Bowl outcome?
Man, that's scripted. Sorry.
You think it was scripted? Oh, come on.
I'm sorry. The Chiefs are the
on.
new Patriots, man.
Yeah.
Come on.
That's annoying. Anyway.
No, that was a fun game to watch though.
Till the very end. But yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I
I won't
thought,
go
I
there.
thought you were gonna go like Chinese balloon related somehow.
Well, yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
That is just fascinating to me.
It is. Now we've got little balloons. Or I think I don't know.
I just don't.
The stuff over Michigan, and I don't
I
know.
don't
All of
understand
this
it.
stuff is weird.
Yeah. Anyway, whether that's a whole, we should
Conspiracy
start.
corner.
I was gonna say we should start a little conspiracy podcast. Oh, that's
Probably
good
get the
stuff.
most
Somebody like just lose their balloon. Like, oh no.
Yeah. And you remember the song? Was it Nena that did the 99 Luftballons? That song back in the 80s, and so I wonder if
I'd
some
like
of
to
those.
say yes, but okay.
Yeah. Forget it.
Maybe a
Never
little
mind.
before it's
Good talk, Jonathan. Okay, let's
wrap
rock
it
on,
up.
man. Thank you so much, Trent. Thank you for watching. You guys have a good rest of the week.